Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to AIW's The Card is Going to Change. On this week's episode, it is episode and week number 2 of the Ask Us Anything. Plenty of you submitted questions via email for our owners, John Thorne and Chandler Biggins. We didn't get to all of them last week. We will finish it this week. And before we do that, of course, want to give thanks to our sponsors, including Angelo's Pizza. Make sure you check out Angelo's award-winning pizza over on Madison Avenue in Lakewood, Ohio.
Should be award-winning fettuccine alfredo because this is delicious.
I was going to say, hell of a veal over there.
Chicken parm, man. It's my way to go every time. Love it.
Shout out to Brandon for the food donations over at Angelo's.
There you go. Also brought to you by Smart Mark Video, who takes care of all of our DVDs and the downloads that you watch the AIW shows.
Taking care of our drinking needs today.
Yeah.
They supplied us with some margarita mix for Christmas.
And tequila because it is Mike Burns' favorite alcoholic beverage. So he sent us a nice bottle of Patron for Christmas. Nice AIW Christmas bonus. Thanks a lot.
Of course, I prefer the Durs.
I don't think that's a thing.
It's Doers.
Doers
Durs on the rock. You know.
Also brought to you.
You just can't get that down, huh?
Can't get it down.
Let's try it one more time.
You chop the walnuts and then you chop the chicken.
No, say doers.
You know.
Say doers.
Doers.
There you go.
Doers on the rocks.
Doers on the rocks.
Also brought to you by...
Fourth time we recorded this.
Yeah. Also brought to you by Jack Prints for all of your printing and graphic design needs. They do banners. They do clothing. Anything you could possibly think of.
Thongs, T-shirts.
Yeah. All at Jack Prints.
They don't know how to make chicken salad, though.
Well, they don't. Make sure you don't know that. Make sure you visit them at jackprints.com.
You cut the walnuts.
JAK Prince.com.
Stole your line, Chandler Biggins.
Now Biggins has found another podcast to rip off.
Yeah, Coco Cabana kind of completed at the when we taped his apartment. Now I'm on the Bruce Pritchard podcast.
All right, those voices that you heard, of course,
Real
are
fucking original guy. We
the
got
AIW owners. My name is Steve Guy. I'm
Goddamn, pal.
Joined by John Thorne and Chandler Biggins. Also, more recently, people referring to them as AIW Owner 1, AIW Owner 2.
Zandig fans is right, man. I think I do hate you.
Yeah, maybe. What happened when?
Oh, see?
All right. Well, we had a
Try booking a show with this guy at a diner.
Very interesting show last week. We're going to get into more of this Ask Us Anything.
And I told you Zandig post because you don't even go there.
I know, because I never went there ever again after that Wiggy lady was mad at me for talking about
Congo Kong's football tickets.
Yeah, never went back there again. I felt attacked.
All right, the first question we're going to lead off
Very
with.
sensitive.
We touch on it every once in a while on this show, but not formally.
No Steven Seagal questions this morning.
No Steven Seagal questions. Those are all out of the way. And this is good as you two sit here and have your back and forth and people wonder how the hell you get along. But how do you go about selecting talents for shows in regards to guys who are not AIW regulars?
Depends on what weird episode of Mid-Atlantic Biggins watches on.
I'm not big on Mid-Atlantic.
Get it right. Mid-South.
Mid-South.
Not Mid-South either.
USWA.
USWA, okay. That was Smoky Mountain.
I mean, that has a factor in it.
Hey, man, I tried to get Bobby Blaze in the Intense division a week ago.
That is a true story.
Do you pay attention to...
Biggins really tried to sell me on Bobby Blaze. Still has a good fucking run in him.
No, he's been retired for years. That's a joke, though, but... Bobby Blaze, yeah, definitely. Shout out to him. You
obviously pay attention to things that are going on outside of, I mean, of course, WWE because not booking them anyway, but outside of the AIW bubble, so to speak.
I definitely think we scout a lot more than a lot of independents do. We're always like, we talk to Drew Cordero all the time and he recommends people to us. Ethan Page runs a Fed. He talks to us about guys that work well for him. And definitely just watching stuff and who's the hot guy at the moment and who would work well in our system.
I mean, a lot of times we book guys just based off their reputation, like online or on Twitter. Like we follow a lot of what people are saying about talent on Twitter. That's how we got into the fucking Matt Riddle situation that we've already covered. But I'd never seen Matt Riddle wrestle in my life before we booked him. There's a lot of guys that like that. We just booked them based off of, their quote-unquote buzz. Who's the guy that's, this is the underappreciated talent from, the South. That's how, we kind of booked the Carnies or Team IOU, just based off recommendations and different people.
And like
suggesting.
a lot of people have recommended them to us. We take a lot of recommendations from like the roster, like, oh, this guy would be perfect for you guys.
Yeah, it's a lot of kind of, there's no right or wrong way to get booked by AIW. I mean, if you write a shitty email, we're gonna.
Well, I was gonna say, to go back to the Double Dare episode, you have booked people you haven't seen before, but not people who just present themselves to you with an email and say, book me.
I mean, honestly, we get so many emails of watch this footage. We don't, we're not gonna watch a 27-minute match.
Yeah, and like if I don't take you seriously immediately with your email, I'm not gonna sit there and watch your 8 YouTube links.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it, honestly, is just like people whose opinions we respect, suggesting people to us or saying like, hey, look into this guy, or hey, nobody's booking this guy and he's really, really, really good.
Because like, for example, Team IOU, they've been around for a long time. And I remember Tommy Mercer or Crimson from TNA talked to us a while ago about them. And then recently they were popping up a lot more just online. And then Con Delaney really put them over to us. And I knew they had done some little work for Drew Cordero. He said they were good. And then Ethan Page, like, it's kind of a big like system you got to go through to get to us, basically.
Yes, like there's no, there's some guys that just get booked straight up, like, you just see or hear of them doing something and it's just like, boom, like this is, let's book this guy, or there's other guys that are just suggested through various different people or recommendations, or like you watch certain fans, or certain fans like do have direct contact to us that are just like they'll send us lists of guys to check out, like like Adam Lash is always sending us guys, and Mike versus Philly on Twitter is always sending us recommendations. Rovert is all these people send us all these kind of different recommendations, and some just get disregarded because there's no space. Some, it just doesn't work out. Things don't.
And like some, it just doesn't fit the role. Cause like if we need a high flyer and you send us like a brawler, maybe that doesn't work out.
Like ACH, when we first booked him, he just came as a ride along with the submission squad. And he was at the time virtually an unknown guy from Texas. That's kind of how it works. Someone's just like, hey, I got this guy. He's real good. Please, take a look at him.
That's how Ethan Page got booked. He drove Jennifer Blake.
Yeah, so that's just kind of we definitely take pride in kind of giving opportunities to, those guys that are, off on the fringe of, independent wrestling, that are going to be supposedly the next guy or girl. But yeah, there's really no rhyme or reason to it. It's just really just a lot of, recommendation from other talents,
and just what we need that immediate second.
So here's a fun question. This has to do with match types. Will you ever, or could we ever, see another cage match in AIW again?
Not at Mount Carmel, because you can't fit a cage through the door, and we left our pink cage at Turner's Hall because we couldn't get it out of the building. Yeah,
that and the fact that if we were going to do a serious cage match with it, we would have to paint it, and that seems like a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could get it back, but cage matches are hard because, especially on the independent level, it's not like, we could suspend it above the ring and just drop it down like a WWE event. It's on the independent level, it's such a long setup, and it's
and honestly, the major factor is venues, because there's just not too many venues that could handle a cage match with the doors and the size and everything.
Yeah, like just getting something, because you got to get those big gigantic fence pieces into the building somehow. So unless you're running a building that has a giant garage door attached to it, like the chances of the cage match are not likely. Like Absolution 10, we originally wanted to do a double ring War Games match for that 10-man tag, and we could not find a venue. Like, we found another ring to use. We were looking into getting another cage. We just could not find a venue that could hold it. I mean, that's why, when we started going to that 10-man tag, we were like, this is going to be a 2 rings War Games match, and then we just could not we could not find a venue that could.
The original
facilitate
plan
it.
was not a War Games until Josh Prohibition just thought it sounded cool.
Oh, yeah. Well, Josh Prohibition said War Games, and then he goes, "That's like a street fight, right?"
We're like, no, man, it's a 2-cage, 2-ring, 2-cage with a roof on it.
And so, I mean, we try to make it work, but it just, it's hard to find a venue that, we're not going to run the fucking Quicken Loans Arena. So it's really hard to find a venue that could get a cage into it.
Our next question, this is from Al at Virtual Pros. We've met them before.
Yeah, nice guys.
Yeah. And first of all, Al gives a shout out that says he wants to make it a point to Angelo's Pizza if he ever ends up back in Cleveland. So you should
One
definitely.
of those guys is the guy I bet $10 on the UFC fight.
I think that was Jay Welf on Twitter.
I bet him $5 that CM Punk was going to hit a GTS in his fight.
That's a
and
stupid
that he was
bet.
going to win.
That's a terrible
Doesn't
bet.
work.
So here you go. These are actually specific to Chandler, and I wanted you to get pumped up about something. As someone that dabbles in buying and reselling wrestling merchandise, what piece of merch got you the biggest return on investment? And do you have any weird stories associated with acquiring said merch?
I've acquired some weird merch, but definitely the things that have the highest profit margin are some of the magazines and programs. Like I'm talking like WWF, like pay-per-view programs, like WrestleMania 3 or Survivor Series 94. I could flip those pretty much for like $20-$30. One time I drove to Indiana to meet a guy at I told the story because of the baby picture. Yeah. I drove to Indiana in one day, over 3 hours, picked up the merchandise, and then drove home, meeting him in a fast food restaurant parking lot. That was a weird one.
Like a drug deal.
Benny Boone just came to my house the other day to unload some merchandise. That was pretty weird. The big bear just walking around my driveway. Pretty much any merch deal is weird.
All right. Keeping on the
Big $30 profit margin. That's the biggest profit margin.
Yeah, I sold a Brandy Runnels Kiss card once for $36.
Kiss cards. Kiss cards are hot, huh?
Kiss cards are hot.
all right, keeping on the theme of weird. This question is from Reese, and the question is: how did the Campus Invasion show in 2007 come together? As it seems like the weirdest show in AIW's history.
That's 100% my doing. My friend Brad, who has appeared in early AIW shows as Moonshine Muck McGee. You could see him on the AIW Absolute debut. I think he might have been in a gauntlet for the gold, and I think he was the ring announcer for parts of Nightmare Before Christmas 1. Yeah, Moonshine Muck McGee, my friend Brad, he attended Ohio University, and now it's a really big deal. There's this thing down there called the Number Fest, but at this time it was just they were on like the third or fourth year, and it was like a big festival kind of in OU, and a field. OU is at this time, I don't know what it's ranked now, but it was ranked the #1 party school in the United States.
In Playboy magazine, which you can buy on my eBay store.
Hey, Biggins has that specific issue. So anyway, it was Brad's senior year, and we had other friends that went to OU, and they wanted to do their own festival. They lived on this street called West State Street, so they wanted to do West Fest. And they were like, "Hey, man, like, let's get a bunch of kegs. We're gonna pull all our money together that's left over from our student loans. Like, this is him and like his whole house full of people. He lived with like 6 or 7 people. They end up buying like 30 kegs, and they were like, we have this much money left over. What kind of weird ex-WWE legend can you get?" And we're like, "Oh, right off the bat, Honky Tonk Man."
Yeah, because we had booked him for the first time, and the Honky Tonk Man Likes to Watch story happened probably about 3 months. It happened in June. This is in September.
Yeah. So
he's like fresh in our mind.
He's fresh in our mind. He was fucking real fun to party with. So we're like, it's a weird situation because you're essentially trying to promote a backyard wrestling show. So we work out a deal with the Honky Tonk Man. He remembered, hey, I just saw you guys 2 months ago. I like to watch. Let's do it again.
And his first question was, where can I find a grocery store by the venue where I could get my Skyline chili mix?
But so essentially, it was just my real life / civilian friends wanted to throw a big party. We did, and it was just kind of like, okay, we're gonna book the Honky Tonk Man, and then it's like whatever other wrestlers want to come, and they can.
That was the first time we booked Sammy Callahan. First time we booked Matt Riot.
Yeah, then Michael Tarver wrestled. Like Michael Tarver was the biggest celebrity on the campus of Ohio University.
Him and Matt Wadsworth.
Yeah, just Matt Wadsworth just surrounded by college ladies all night.
Because they were impressed with his thumbtacks and barbed wire bumps.
Yeah, because Matt Wadsworth decided to wrestle, so me and him wrestled, and we just used a bunch of like deathmatch stuff because we were like, oh man, this would be the best way to get laid at a. Well, I couldn't because I had a girlfriend with me, but for him, it was like, oh, this is gonna be the best way to fucking pull a college broad. Is like I made like a crown of barbed wire and I just like wrapped it around his head and I double stomped like thumbtacks into him, and man, he was getting some sympathy. Matt Wadsworth, I believe that is his only AIW professional wrestling match, and it was simply to try to score some college ladies.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
But I guess that's
like if
campus
you watch
invasion.
it, it's not a good show, but a live experience, it was second to none.
Yeah, because literally there's 30 or 40 kegs, and just I would say 500 people just show like, in this. Just a backyard of a house at Ohio University.
The entranceway was literally a driveway into like the turnaround of a driveway where the ring was by like a garage, and they were just jam packed drinking. Honky Tonk Man was in heaven.
Yeah, he loved it. And then like all the houses around, people were just out on their roofs like partying and watching. So like the party just went as far as the eye could see. It was definitely a fun experience. I definitely regret bringing a girlfriend to that. Matt Wadsworth was cleaning up.
Moving on to the next question, sticking to shows and names and ideas. This is from Ed of Pod Van Dam. He wants to know who had the idea for Fresh Meat. Was there any fear the concept would or wouldn't work and how it would draw? And do you plan on doing another?
I mean, that was just kind of like probably a co-promotion with Thorne and I, just trying to get the students' experience with like veterans.
Well, actually, the idea was I really enjoy watching MTV The Challenges on Hulu and Amazon, and I mean Fresh Meat is definitely a marquee type of season for the challenge.
And Battle of Sexes as well.
So
we just revealed our big secret.
Yeah, the challenge. So it was just like Fresh Meat. They usually take a rookie and they put him with some kind of challenge veteran. So we go, hey, this sounds like a great.
This is literally how we operate.
This sounds like a great way to book the students. Let's take a student and match them up against a veteran, and that way, they're gonna get some good experience. It's an easy concept for people to understand.
Chances of it being good is better than two students against each other.
Yeah, because two students could get lost, but if you match them up with the right veterans, they could definitely help them to get through it. So. There was really no thought of the event failing whatsoever. I thought it was a pretty, straightforward sort of thing.
And that's why we tagged it with Girls Night Out too, to make it like a big event. And we knew we were going to be okay because a lot of people were making debuts that show.
Which means we're going to sell some tickets.
Yeah, and then by the third show, they're down to 0.
So as we talk about people who are new and people trying different things, sometimes those moves and spots don't always work out. This question coming from Brian K. He wants to know, how do you guys feel about AIW clips making it to Botchamania?
I mean, it is what it is. Like Botchamania is kind of like, I guess, kind of like a pop culture thing at this point. It's definitely like, oh fuck, this sucks that they whoever was wrestling in the match totally fucking like biffed it. But
weird body trying to do that one dive.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also great exposure at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, that AIW watermark is there. It's just another. I look at it somewhat as a promotional tool. because people know what they're getting into when they click a Botchamania link. They
Sure.
want to laugh for 5 minutes. So it's not like it's not like malicious in any way. So I mean, I don't really mind it.
And like Matthew is a listener of the show, and he's always been nice to us, and he's a good guy, and it definitely is. I'm not gonna say I love it, but I'm not gonna say I hate it either. But the AIW clips are also kind of few and far between because it doesn't seem like we have enough Botchamania worthy stuff on it, like screw ups and stuff.
You're really calling people out now. Now it's gonna be flooded.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Submissions.
As long as nobody's
Biggins talking a big game right now.
As long as nobody's pulling a lever every Botchamania for AIW clips, I think we're fine.
Well, yeah. Luckily, we don't have the lever pull, but I mean, it is what it is. Like I watch Botchamania. I love it. I especially think it's funny when like an AIW student gets on there because they don't know how to, they're still new. I think it's kind of like a humbling thing to be like, hey, you still got to get fucking better. Like when Kaplan fucking almost dies on Botchamania.
He impales Carson.
It's kind of like, hey, babe, maybe you should come to practice a little more. So yeah,
that's a Facebook gif now.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think it's, it is what it is. It's Botchamania is like its own brand at this point.
I also have to say the end of this email wasn't a question, but it was a request with an exclamation point. P.S. Book Massage Envy again.
Oh, that will definitely happen because the Oil Master
and the Fetish Friendly.
If there's one guy that could get Missy Hyatt out of retirement, it could be the Oil Master.
The Fetish Friendly Dorian Graves and the Oil Master VSK both teaming on Missy Hyatt. You think she'd come up for that?
I don't know. It's up to her. The ball's in her court.
Ball's in her court, but we would definitely allow them to just massage Missy Hyatt in the ring and not even wrestle.
While Jock Sampson watches.
All right. Can you talk about your experience working with a post-prison Nick Gage?
Oh, I'll tell you what. Nick Gage is probably one of my favorite guys in the history of AIW. Just the most intense, like crazy matches, but literally one of the nicest guys. And like Absolution, me and him had like a real big talk, Absolution 10 with the crazy Tim and Tim Donst match. And like he was really involved in how can we, make AIW bigger? How can we make it better? Like he was a guy that really took heart in places he worked and really wanted to improve them. And it's sad what happened with him, and we have an open door for him whenever he wants to come back to wrestling. And we supported him when he went back to a correctional facility. We helped with his legal bills and stuff like that because he really, deep down, his heart is there in wrestling, and he is a great guy. I love him.
Yeah, I think, Nick Gage, obviously, any guy who just did X amount of years in a penitentiary is going to be a little rough around the edges. But it's kind of one of those things to where wrestling kind of brings the weirdest, collection of people together that would never, it would never happen anywhere else. You have a school teacher mingling with a ex-con. It's just one of those things that wrestling is so weird. But Nick Gage is, I would say, definitely has an open door to come back to AIW. He definitely, as much as he's nice and respectful, it's not a gimmick whatsoever. I mean, that's the real deal.
He's like one of those guys that he's your best friend until you cross him, and then he's killing you.
Yeah, and I mean, just by his heart is in his his performance, his whatever, but he's definitely a guy that's like, you're a little bit on higher alert when he's around, just because it's hard not to be. It's just like he's coming out of prison, so it's not like, hey man, what's up, like hugs. It's like, hey, free beer, right? Yeah, absolutely. I get pizza, right? Yeah, yes, Mr. Gage. Have at it. Who am I to say you can't have some free beers? So I loved having him around though, because Nick Gage is one of those guys that's real. That if you want to talk about, believability being dead in professional wrestling, put Nick Gage out there, and he'll make you believe, because it's as close to being a legitimate fight for your life as you could get. He definitely has an open door, but
Nicky.
we did help with his legal fees. We sent him money for lawyers and different things, and wrote him letters of recommendation. So I don't know where he's at now. I hear that he is out. Maybe he has decided to step back from wrestling,
Getting help or something. We don't know. We haven't talked to him. We talked to other people. I hope he's doing well though.
But yeah, Nick Gage, I would say, definitely an intense guy to work with, but definitely a guy that I would happily welcome back.
What was the strangest thing to happen during a match?
Oh, well, I think we talked about that the other day when there was a guy trying to strip naked in Thorne's match. That was pretty weird.
Yeah, I think that probably would take the cake, right?
I would say that's definitely the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me personally in a match. It's definitely a drunk officer of the law getting in the ring
Try to strip.
and taking all of his clothes off, and then not realizing he had a singlet on underneath his clothes, and thinking he was completely naked, Frank the Tank style, old school, thinking his dick was out.
I would say another weird thing was when I'm talking to a building owner and all of a sudden the fans start throwing all the chairs in. During a Absolution 4, they did the fans did the ECW chair riot, and I'm talking to the building owner, and I think he almost fell over dead when that happened.
That's probably not good, yeah.
That was bad, because also a wrestler, then after that happens, he got hit. During it happening, he gets hit in the head with a chair,
Like in the brainstem.
and has a seizure in the ring. That was pretty scary.
And there's chandeliers that people were throwing chairs by. It was not a good moment.
Wow. All right.
I'm going to go with this guy, TJ Dynamite, having a seizure in the ring.
Yeah, that's bad too.
Would you ever book Brian Zane, Jim Cornette, or the Rock and Roll Express in the near future?
In the near future, I don't know. I'm not opposed to any of the four of them. I like Wrestling with Regret. I'm not too familiar with his wrestling work, but
Yeah, I don't like. I find myself in a Wrestling with Regret rabbit hole a lot of times on YouTube when I'm bored. But I don't know about booking him. Jim Cornette, that's kind of like a double-edged sword sort of thing. Is I feel Jim Cornette has kind of developed this reputation to where it would almost be negative to book him because so many of the modern fans hate him. I do think he makes a lot of sense sometimes. He just needs a filter to filter through, the point that he's trying to get across. So I don't know. We did talk to Jim Cornette not that long ago.
yeah, he was in the area already.
He was in the area, and we kind of were like, hey, if you want to sell some stuff, you're more than welcome. But he was already going home.
And I got a lot of respect for Cornette. Obviously, he does make a lot of sense on things. There's a whole YouTube channel, Jim Cornette Talking Sense, that makes a lot of sense, ironically. But his thoughts on Colt Cabana and Kevin Steen and some other stuff is so far off. I just don't agree with it. I could see being opposed to some of these guys, but there's a big difference between not liking a style of wrestling and saying you want to take a gun and shoot Kenny Omega in the face. He kind of goes too extreme sometimes. I got a lot of respect for him though, but definitely disagree with him on Kevin Steen and the Young Bucks and Colt Cabana and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's like he said, there's some stuff that he's so dead on about, and the older I get, some of the stuff makes a lot of sense that he's trying to say, but then he just says some real fucking off the wall shit, and I think half the time it's just a gimmick.
I think he's like a shock jock, like a Howard Stern or a Morton Downey Jr.
Yeah, he's just trying to rile people up.
Magnet.
He's just trying to rile people up to get to keep his name out there or whatever. So I would say it's more unlikely that we ever book him. And the Rock and Roll Express, I mean, we booked Ricky Morton at Absolution 2.
Him and Dave the Potato, Rock and Roll Express.
But yeah, that's the Rock and Roll Express were heavily considered for Double Dare, but it just kind of boiled down to, do you want to go down, which road we want to go down? Do we want to try to use some like new up and coming talent, or do we want to book guys like the Rock and Roll Express who are probably still great in the ring, but it's not everybody is going to want to be there for that, because we're fully aware that a lot of the modern type fan, they don't know who they are or what they were, or they just see some guys that
if we had $1 for every person that came into the AIW wrestling school that think of Edge as like an old veteran, like that's as old as they go back as like Edge and John Cena, then but that's the next generation coming up that we're trying to sell tickets to.
Yeah, so it's like kind of like, yeah, I would love to just fucking sit down in the AIW locker room and listen to the Rock and Roll Express tell stories all night, but I don't know that a lot of the AIW fans would be like super pumped to watch the Rock and Roll Express wrestle in 2017. So it's it's another one of those double-edged sword sort of things. It's like, do we want to book for ourselves, or do we want to book to keep in business sort of thing? So
I'm trying to find like the right answer.
And I'm not saying booking the Rock and Roll Express would put us out of business, but it's just kind of one of those things. It's like,
the risk versus the reward.
You got to know your audience and like find that middle ground somewhere.
So last episode, we had some names that were mentioned a couple times in emails, and I have a couple more that were mentioned on more than one occasion. The first being Jessica Havoc.
J-Hav.
Will we ever see her?
I would say there's probably no chance of her ever coming back.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably not. Really, the situation with us is bizarre. She just kind of stopped accepting our dates and, I guess made up some sort of issue that she had with us. There's been a different story, every single time she said it, but.
And like, I think the original problem she had with us was the fact that she was our AIW Women's Champ, but then Haley Hatred, who she had heat with, was going to get a match with Gail Kim, and she felt she should have the match with Gail Kim. But it was a whole deal where Haley Hatred had found a money sponsor to pay for Gail Kim. So it was kind of like
the Yakuza.
Well, yeah, but I wasn't going to say it. But it was a thing where the money was there for Gail Kim, so Haley was getting the match. And I think she took offense to that, and then that just led to the snowball effect of, every time she talks to somebody, it's a different story why she hates us.
But yeah, and like we had talked maybe two or 3 years ago, and things were fine, and we were considering bringing her back, and or in the very least we were gonna film some stuff with her and kind of bury the hatchet, and then it just talks just kind of fell apart, and then that's just where it's at. So I would say highly unlikely, especially coming off of all the other controversies that have surrounded her and the last year. I would just try to stay away from that.
All right, the name Veronica.
Oh well, that wasn't our choice. Veronica retired. She's doing well, though. I know a lot of people have asked me how she is. She's doing well. I talk to her once in a while. Her and her cousin Sammy Giordano both doing well.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the. She was a very people don't understand. Like, she was a very integral part in getting so many of the East Coast talents to AIW events. She would kind of coordinate at that time period. A lot of the ride situations and things like that. A lot of people. That's one of the things that like people would never grasp or know.
There's times where we book a car and there's 4 people, and then 3 of the people don't drive.
Yeah, so like she was honestly like Veronica was a very integral part during her time in AIW of like making sure all these different talents got to AIW and kind of heading the charge, so to speak, on coordinating things, and she was a very, 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 very integral part of AIW at that time.
And she came to us one time and said she was going to retire, and we talked her into saying 6 more months, and then she finally said, "This is it."
Yeah, I talked her out of it for 6 months, and then finally she's like, I want to retire. I want to, I did wrestling. I did what I basically, I wanted to be involved in it. I've been involved in it. Now, she kind of wanted to.
And she had some like family stuff going on and stuff, but her and ironically Sammy Giordano both retiring at the same time. But
shocking.
But she was great to work with. Still doing good. That's about it. There's really no.
Yeah, there's not much of the story there. She just wanted, some people just retire.
That's fair. So the last name is fun because as I sit here, I am with the 2 owners of AIW, but there's maybe a third, and folks want to know whatever happened to Chest Flexor.
Oh, Chester Flexorstein. He just got married and he went to Thailand.
Yeah, he's Chest Flexor,
still a world traveler,
still being an eccentric. I just saw a video of him playing with a tiger.
And it's a true thing.
He just, it was just kind of one of those things where he was around for a while, did a storyline, and it was just kind of one of those things that fades away. It's like there wasn't a need for the authority figure.
And it kind of faded away when, like, he was like the person defending AIW against Nixon, and it just was like a storyline that kind of, when it was done, it was like, I don't think Chest Flexor is going to be a guy that just is in a random scramble. Like, he's like a guy that needs a story behind him at all times, I think.
I mean, he's definitely will probably be back. I know he had one of Chandler Biggins' favorite matches of all time, Chest Flexor versus Johnny Gargano.
Oh, definitely. It's on the Best of Blood or Geno 4. Either one of those titles. Yes, definitely one of my favorite matches of all time.
But he was one of those guys that was just kind of around forever, like a Jerry situation. He was one of those guys that was around early AIW and,
just fell into a role that worked for him.
Well, it's great that you mentioned that's perhaps one of Chandler's favorite matches of all time, because our next question from Michael literally is, what are both of your all-time favorite AIW matches and why?
Well, I'll go. Johnny Gargano was probably one of my favorite guys. There was the match with him and the Dave the Potato. That's one of my favorites. Him and Chest Flexor was one of my favorites. I would say the first time we booked I know this is definitely not Thorne's favorite match, but the first time we booked Necro Butcher versus Drake Younger versus Thorne at Hell on Earth 3, that was the first time we went like totally like ultra violent death match. And like as a fan of that style, like it was just so awesome, especially to have those 2 guys in because I was so enamored with them at that point.
I'm glad you were fucking enamored with them.
Yeah.
That sucked.
Yeah, that was good for me, not for you. I'm trying to think of what else. Definitely Bryan Danielson, Johnny Gargano at Absolution 5. That was like a big like peak, I think, of AIW. Like, oh my god, I can't believe we're right here.
Yeah, I would say Elgin versus Josh Alexander. Either one of those were excellent. The Gargano versus Ethan Page matches were excellent.
Especially when the one that Ethan Page turned face at.
Yeah, I would go with those 2. I'm trying to think. Definitely not Necro Butcher versus me versus Drake Younger, because that fucking was an awful experience for me. I mean, it was a sweet experience, but it was like I remember I could not walk for 3 days after that.
Well, you did take a cop killer on a shopping cart.
So that is not my favorite match of all time. Johnny Gargano was definitely an MVP, so to speak. Johnny Gargano versus Tyler Black 30-minute Iron Man match was excellent. Johnny Gargano was a common theme in this. And then some kind of like random matches that I really enjoyed. Sterling James Keenan, Corey Graves versus Madman Pondo. That's up on our YouTube for free. Ricochet versus Shima Zion. That was excellent. There was a time where we were doing this kind of like 3-way tag feud with the Olsen twins, the Irish Airborne OI4K and Aeroform, Flip Kendrick and Lewis Linden. They had some excellent matches. It's kind of hard because you just forget everything that, you forget. Like, I forgot last month's shows already because you're so focused on the future. It's like so much blends together.
And like we talked about in like the bad weather episode, but Athena Mia Yim is by far probably one of my favorite G&O matches. Bloodsport, Heidi and Shayna with the Ronda Rousey run-in was one of my favorites.
I was gonna say, yeah, there's a lot of recent matches. Probably, I mean, you guys
First
are
women main event, and they delivered.
Yeah, that was excellent. Dan Severn versus Colin Delaney, honorable mention.
What about a match you get in there, kind of unsuspecting, maybe to some, like a Hot Sauce Tracy Williams and Shigehiro Irie, a guy that
Hot Sauce is just a performer. Like, I love his work. I was gonna say though, how could I forget Grado and Tracy Smothers? One of the most craziest matches ever is seen in Road Diaries 3.
Yeah, and honorable mention Eddie Kingston versus Erie. That was excellent. That was
Erie had a good run in AIW.
That was a match that Kingston definitely needed to, like, I don't know what the word is, but it definitely brought out the Eddie Kingston that everybody knows and remembers and wants, and definitely motivated him. So that was excellent.
We got a little Yonkers, Eddie.
All right, our next round of questions actually has to deal with AIW and your relationships with some other promotions that are out there. Starting with maybe a little bit of backstory on the AIW split.
I mean, that's an episode on its own. I don't know if we're going to get into that in this format, but it was definitely something that happened. And ironically, the first show we had back when it was just me, Thorne, and a couple other people, but it was mainly just Thorne and I, was the Campus Invasion show. So that's pretty crazy to come back from a split with that show.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that is as interesting a story as people kind of have made it up in their heads to be.
Like, very romanticized.
And I think, I'd probably leave it at that because it's really not all that interesting.
And the people that mattered in the split, we've all settled any beef with. Like, everybody that needed to come back came back. So
yeah, I mean, it's just a thing that happened, and it was just kind of like, let's see who survives and who doesn't, and that's pretty much the cut and dry of it. It was just kind of a,
any bad feelings or anything ended when Raymond Rowe came out at Wrestle Rager.
Yeah, and I mean that that'll probably be, if we ever get into it, that'll probably be a sit down episode with Raymond Rowe to really get into it. But a lot of the stuff is very romanticized in people's heads, and honestly, it's just a bad era of AIW, like altogether. Not before and years after. It's just the growing pains of being an independent wrestling promotion. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it.
And I think if Thorne and I knew what we knew now, the whole time we ran AIW, it would be a far different promotion.
But you don't know everything when you start.
Can't live in the
it's
past.
like it's kind of like you learn and you have these experiences, and then you kind of evolve from there. So yeah.
All right, what are your thoughts on DJ Hyde and CZW?
There's a lot of people on their shows I like. I think they're misused, but it's not my company.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of DJ Hyde. I don't know if I'll ever get into the actual story of it all, but I think he's just a bad human being. CZW is, it just, yeah, I don't know. It just, CZW has a lot of talented guys. I think, it's just another independent wrestling promotion. I could definitely do without DJ Hyde though.
He doesn't seem like a guy I would be friends with in real life. That's all I'm saying.
Well, in general, as a promotion, it's a different kind of promotion. I think people sometimes forget that, yeah, while other promotions are kind of competition, a lot of them are very different in how they go about things.
I think every independent is competition in the fact that we're all competing for money that isn't going to WWE. And,
sure,
that pool of money is very limited, I think, but it's not like, it's 8 hours away, so it doesn't affect us that much.
But you could have a very similar card, and it's just that the way that it would be done at CZW would be completely different at AIW.
Well, it's just, that's the thing. It's like everybody has their own thought process behind things and own philosophies. And, it's one of those things, they have some talented guys there. They have some guys that I don't think are that talented. But
there's people there we don't like. There's people there we like. So
I mean, it's all subjective and personal opinion. So what we think of CCW doesn't really matter.
Because we weren't going to buy tickets or buy pay-per-views anyway, so I don't think they're marketing to us.
All right. From Chris specifically, he wanted to know about AAW and your thoughts there. He happened to notice that when Johnny was on the indie scene, the dates weren't conflicting, but now some of them are. Does that have anything to do with it, or that
has
just
nothing
by
to
chance?
do with Johnny? That's just by chance, and we've always tried to coordinate dates, but really it's almost impossible to avoid everything. If we're avoiding trying to conflict with Evolve or Ring of Honor or WWE or events in Cleveland even, and then besides wrestling, if you go to like Mount Carmel, they have bingo, they have basketball, they have church events. We had to move a show in 2017 because they're having like a confirmation weekend. So it's just one of those things where it just falls on those days, and we try to do the best possible thing to make it fair for both of us. We talked to Danny Daniels. We talked to Dr. Keith. When we were in Chicago, we saw Danny Daniels. Dr. Keith talks to Thorne a lot. There's no like beef, but it's just, it's just one of those things where if a date's available, we're going to take it.
It has to do with the venue, mostly, right?
Well, it has to do with everything.
Venue, talent, like we have our kind of core guys that we want to book. So it's like, okay, all these guys are available on this date. All right, we're going with that. We don't use a lot of crossover talent if you really boil it down.
Sure.
Between AAW and AIW, you try to just avoid dates at all costs, but it's impossible. Like he said, you're trying to schedule around venues, your core talent. If the WWE's coming to town, if there's, Evolve that weekend, which kind of falls back on talent that we want to book. Ring of Honor, just all sorts of stuff. There's all sorts of different factors. You can't possibly avoid everything. And then, you can avoid everything, and then PWG will be like, oh, we're running on this day. And then, half your talent will pull off for that. So, like, it's almost impossible to schedule around everything.
And we have to schedule these shows months and months and months in advance. And that's what we were complaining about like a month ago we kept coming against the Indians and stuff, because as much as we plan, we can't know for sure they're going to be in the playoffs or the finals or, that kind of stuff.
But yeah, it had nothing to do with Johnny. It's a coincidence. I would say at this point, we leave a big gap around our schedule around late spring, summer, and early fall, because we like to try to see where everyone's kind of dates fall. So, we scheduled the first half of the year, and we scheduled, our regular events, which, is Hell on Earth is always on Black Friday. And then we scheduled an event in December, but there's a gap from May until November that we kind of have left open right now. But as of right now, there are no other conflicts with AAW other than February 17th.
And the other thing with AAW is, I don't think a lot of people know, but a lot of times if they're Friday, we're Saturday, we split a lot of talent. So it's not like we're working against each other. It's actually working with most of the time, if possible.
Or what are your thoughts on the new promotion that works out of Turner's Hall?
I don't know if there's a necessary need for anybody to run wrestling in Cleveland besides us. I know that sounds selfish or monopolized, but I just don't see the need. If we're running so many shows, if there's a need for another promotion, I think we do just fine. I think Mega Championship Wrestling covers when we're not running. We try to help out the UXWA, which is a very small-time, smaller fed in Cleveland. There just seems to be, with our success, there seems to be a lot of people popping up. Like, we joked about pop-up pro wrestling, but that's what it seems like lately. A lot of times people come to AIW shows and think there's this wealth at the end of the rainbow, and I'm not necessarily sure if people realize the money and upkeep it takes to keep a promotion on its feet. And I think a lot of fans think that there's this gold at the end of the rainbow, and we've yet to see it. Maybe Flow Slam will come along this year and give it to us.
Yeah, I don't like Cleveland is a small, big city, and I just don't think that there is enough, I guess, wrestling interest or whatever to sustain multiple promotions on the west side of Cleveland, so close together. I just don't think people have that much disposable income right now. So, I know that they definitely have trouble drawing. I would assume that they're going to continue having trouble drawing because it's hard to, you have to spend so much money on talent and marketing and promotion just to draw 200 people in Cleveland. So,
and I could not imagine in 2016 starting something up, or 2017 starting something up. Like, we've had years of branding and social media outreach and everything else to all of a sudden decide one day, like, hey, I'm running a show. Here's my flyer on Facebook.
Yeah, and it's just like, even with all that stuff built up, it's still hard for us. So it's going to be especially hard for people with not much experience or, I guess, reach. So, it is what it is. I'm happy that we kind of got out of Turner's Hall when we did and found Mark Carmel. I think it was
a blessing in disguise for sure.
We were very upset at the time, but I think Mount Carmel has, it's much nicer, it's bigger, it's cleaner.
Heat and air conditioning.
Yeah, so, I am, it is what it is. I don't have too many thoughts on it. I just think I think it's a poor investment to start an independent wrestling promotion in 2017, especially, with all the turnover now that WWE signing people. It's really, really going to become extremely difficult in the next couple months to maintain an independent wrestling promotion with all kind of the marquee indie talent disappearing. So it's going to be interesting how not only AIW shakes out if we could survive, but, just everything else, even kind of these smaller, newer promotions, not only in Cleveland, but, across the country.
That's going to bring us to our last two questions, and perfectly goes into them. These were both submitted to us by Luke, and having to deal with the future of AIW. First question being, do you ever see the possibility in the future of providing a live stream of your events via Flow Slam, Powerbomb TV, or some other service?
If you own a Brinks truck full of money, you could send it to our P.O. box.
I don't know that anybody owns a Brinks truck besides Brinks.
Well, you could ship the money to us via Brinks.
We've had some conversations with Powerbomb TV and things. I just think, right now, it's the live streaming is still such unpredictable technology. There's still so many issues with it. There were issues when we did it in the past, and there continues to be issues with it.
I would be hard it would be hard to come up with an pay-per-view in the last few years that has had no issues. And it's not like, WWE putting on a pay-per-view. It's an independent company trying to put on what basically is like the WWE network, and it just does not work.
Yeah, I mean, the server costs and things like that, and the technology that you need to invest in.
And there's a reason why a lot of the video companies like High Spots and Smart Video pretty much got out of it.
Yeah, because the technology is just so unpredictable. It's not there yet, and it's not, the service doesn't take the hit. It's the promotion, because we have to answer to the fans that paid for it, So it's, if the money was there and it was a good deal for us, we would consider it. But, we do very well on Smart Mark Video. It's kind of going to come to a surprise to a lot of people, but physical media dying is a fucking myth, because we still sell so many more DVDs compared to streams or MP4s or anything digital.
And people have tweeted us before doubting this. I would love for you to come to my house and watch me sit there with a DVD duplicator and make these, just like DJ Hyde in that Vice documentary. I sit there and watch YouTube videos and make DVDs and sell them out every AIW show.
Yeah, I mean, so it would definitely have to be the right offer for us to do something, because, it has an impact on things.
AIW at AIWrestling.com. We'll take any and all offers.
Yeah, we'll definitely hear offers out, but it has impacts on things. We have a relationship with Smart Mark Video. Smart Mark Video has done a lot for us.
If it wasn't for Smart Mark Video, we would have died years and years ago. That's all I'm saying.
So I mean, for us to jeopardize that business relationship, it's going to have to be a hell of an offer, and it's going to have to be something that we know is going to be good for fans, because even Flow Slam right now has been experiencing some trouble with their streams. So until someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm going to give you X amount of money, I am going to handle the streaming. It's flawless. It's proven." I don't know that it's a road that we want to go down. But I mean, I'll definitely take $1 million or whatever and give it a shot.
Yeah, I'll take any duffel bags full of cash that anybody has.
Or you could send us money in Maxim magazines in the mail.
Yeah, and then I'll take the money out and sell the Maxims on eBay.
But yeah, it's gonna have to be the right offer.
And we're doing fine as it is right now, so it's hard for us to jump on something else without this quote life-changing money that everybody talks about.
All right. Well, that being said, as you look towards the future, what's the ultimate vision that you have of what you'd like AIW to be? Is it something where you're touring widely, or the current setup pretty much ideal, just kind of want to add to it, and maybe what are some of the thoughts or things you'd like to add, maybe improvements or whatever the case may be?
Save my life from eBay. Make it that I can wake up and just do AIW and don't have to eBay.
I don't know that I necessarily see us touring. I think kind of in this modern landscape, the touring indie is dead. I think the costs that come with it are excessive.
Yeah, because you're talking, if we just run shows in Cleveland, we're flying people into Cleveland, can get them in hotels here. With that, you're talking extra airline tickets, extra hotels, extra driving.
At the point where you start touring, then you have to provide accommodation for even the local Cleveland talent, and that that jumps the budget up. So obviously we'll go places if there's an offer in place to where it's kind of like a paid situation, like we are just brought in as a package, so to speak.
Because the other thing is, people ask why we run Cleveland. Thorne and I live in Cleveland. I live in the suburbs, but and so does Thorne. But we are Northeast Ohio Cleveland guys. To where if you want us to run a show, like we got emails before, oh, come run a show in Canada, come run a show in Texas. Like we can't just pick up and take our whole operation there and run a show unless we're millionaires.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know the lay of the land, so to speak, in these other areas. We know what works for Cleveland, and what works for Cleveland might not work in Indianapolis or
Indianapolis.
Like it might not work, and the costs would be excessive. So I kind of am more of the build it and they will come mindset. I think if you put on a good show, you put together an interesting enough lineup, you're gonna get people to travel in from out of town.
And I think that's what the successful indies have done lately, is the build it they will come. PWG started it with building up Reseda. Beyond Wrestling, you're going to Boston or Rhode Island for them. You're going to the Cleveland area for us. Like if you put a map and put darts in every city, I'm going to Cleveland for AIW, I'm going to Boston for Beyond,
I'm going to Chicago for AIW. It's almost like a newer version of the territories, but like we don't really run a territory. It's kind of like we all stick to our city, and everyone kind of doesn't venture out from there, and you kind of just get your own little piece of the pie in that area.
And like CWF Mid-Atlantic, you're going to their building, or Nova Pro runs this building. Like there's probably about 30 feds in the country right now that like you go to a certain area, I'm in this area, I could go to this show.
So where do you guys want to see this go? I mean, things like increased production value.
Obviously,
larger venue. Are there goals in mind with things?
We would be lying to say we don't want to make more money and draw bigger crowds and have the greatest talent in the world. But it just constantly building. Like they just had that thing online about how We increased our number 71% from last year, 2015 into 2016. It's stuff like that.
We don't want to get, too, I guess, I don't know, like, make our expectations too unexceedable. We want to make short-term goals and get to those goals. We don't want to sit here and say, hey, in 2 years we need to be making X amount of dollars profit for ourselves.
Sure.
We would love that, but we also work with the realities of how the business is.
Yeah, like short-term evolution. We had money to build that stage. Then we had money to build the ramp. We would love to get
new belts.
We got belts. It's kind of small-time investments and small-time goals rather than, hey, by the end of the year we need to be doing this or we're failures. It's kind of like, okay, like let's get from December to March and stay in business and see where we're at. Okay, let's buy some lights or let's book this person.
And not to say anything about the guy's email, but on paper a wrestling fan could go, why doesn't AIW go to Indiana? Why doesn't AIW book this guy? Well, the reality is we know the numbers and we struggle just like every other company right now. It's a hard sell to sell people on wrestling, and we do an okay job at it. So it's getting the people in the door, having them have a good show, people enjoying it on DVD. We're doing okay, but we could always do better, and a lot of that is out of our hands.
Yeah, I would say short-term goal. We would love to see larger crowds because then we have more capital to invest in things. But other than that, that's really the only thing. I don't think
people understand, when it comes to voting, people are always like, your one vote counts. One ticket makes a big difference sometimes.
Yeah, it's just kind of one of those things, and it's like, who knows what's going to happen? Like I said earlier, the whole landscape of independent wrestling seems to be changing in 2017 with the WWE getting a lot more hands-on and signing a lot more people, and it's just kind of like,
please tell us where to send our resumes.
Where are people going to want to spend their money? It's kind of like you could see all this stuff for $9.99 on the WWE Network, or you gotta kind of spread things out. So it's going to be interesting to see how people spend their money and how we have to kind of our business needs to react to that. So we can't really have a set plan. I would just say if you're a fan of independent wrestling, no matter what city you're in, go support the live event, because the live gate and the live attendance is really what is making the difference these days.
100%. And, even if you can't make it to somewhere, I know a lot of people like our transparency. We're honest about everything. And hopefully that gets you to buy these shows. I know a lot of people say us talking about events sells them the MP4 or the DVD through us or Smart Mark Video. Just keep supporting, because without your support, we're just two guys not running wrestling anymore.
Yeah, so I guess that's kind of where our goals are at, is just really stay in business. That's goal number one. And then goal number two, we'll figure that out once we stay in business.
I think that's been the struggle for 12 years, and we've made it a dozen years. We're still trying to make that lucky 13.
All right, final question, because you just made me think of it, and I realized I missed that email. It says, love the new tag belts. Will there be new replacement belts for the other titles in the future?
Yeah, that's not really that juicy of a story. It's just kind of, we kind of went from replica belts to shitty looking custom belts to better looking belts to now the tag belts look really amazing. And now the better belts we bought before don't look as great compared to the tag belts. So it's just kind of one of those things. It's
it's going to be a gradual change, but it's not going to be one day everybody shows up with new belts.
But, if you're a promoter or promotion and you need belts, I encourage you to check out Indie Belts on Facebook. Very affordable stuff, very quality looking stuff. So
I still think they should change the name to Leather by Lash. But
yeah, Adam Lash. It's Adam Lash's one of his many companies. Yeah, eventually we would obviously love to have new belts. It's just a financial thing. It's just you got to build that nest egg up, and then okay, now we have enough money.
And then sometimes, do we run this show and book this talent, or do we buy a new belt? And, the talent and the shows are what bring in the most money, and a belt doesn't bring in money, technically.
And that's just kind of the same thing about the production values. Like, they're nice. It's like icing on the top or whatever.
Sure.
But a light's not selling a ticket. A belt's not selling a ticket. So it's kind of like, what do we think people would rather see? Some fucking really cool looking belts, or some fucking kind of higher priced talent that they really have wanted to see for a long time live? So that's kind of where you got to juggle things as promoters.
Well, there you have it, folks. That's going to do it. This was part 2 of the Ask Us Anything here on The Card is Going to Change, presented by AIW and sponsored by Angelo's Pizza, Smart Mark Video, and Jack Prince. Steve Guy here, and as always, want to thank Chandler Biggins and John Thorne, the owners of AIW, for sitting down and sharing their thoughts, this time on your questions. Join us next week, right back here. The Card is Going to Change.
Thanks.
Oh, Jesus. 2 fucking stolen.